yeah, 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 yeah. Step into the den where the stories ignite. Legends in the making, all the ones in the light. They walk through the fire, they've danced with the fight. Barely holding back, but their words take flight. Barely legends, yeah, we're breaking the scene. Raw truth, no fluff, every word is clean. From the top of the game to the ones unseen. Barely legends where the dream gets me. Yeah, we got tales from the rise and the climb so steep. Bars of wisdom hidden in the secrets they keep. Mic in the hand, truth rolls so deep. Barely legends waking giants from sleep. Barely legends, yeah, we're breaking the scene. Raw truth, no fluff, every word is clean. From the top of the game to the ones unseen. Barely legends where the dream gets me. Barely scratching the surface.
And I would love to hear one favorite go-to like workout song, and then two your dad kids show that you're watching with your kids. Like I know a lot of them are pretty annoying, but like I know that we all catch ourselves watching it. Me and Michael are dads as well. And three guilty pleasure song. Yep. Hmm. Yeah.
The gym. I just do it because I want to be healthy. And then obviously when I was younger and I was wrestling more often, it's a body business. So I wanted to look good too. But yeah, don't need to be angry in the gym anymore. Second question was, what am I watching with my kids? My kids are a little bit older. I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old, so they're all about the YouTube right now. They
Yeah.
want to watch YouTube all the time. They have the ones they like. Obviously, Mr. Beast is one of those. They like the Bucket Squad guys, which are like basketball or something
Okay.
like that, trick shots and different challenges. There's this other guy. I don't know. I don't know his name. He's early 20s, blonde kid with curly hair, and he's like he has really good manners. And so I'm like, let's watch
Uh,
him. Let's watch him more
Brian
because
Brian Trahan.
I want you to learn the manners from this
Yeah.
kid. I don't know his name though. He did one video I liked where he used like the meta glasses
Yeah.
only. Like that was the only technology he used, and he drove from where he lived in like Las Vegas up to Northern California and found some spot in the mountains that used to be his screensaver on his laptop
Yeah.
when he was younger. I don't know who that guy is,
Bri-
but I thought that.
I think
Do
it's
you know
Brian
him?
Trahan.
Yes, that
Yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. But he has very nice manners, so I like that young
Yes.
man, and I enjoy his YouTube when I watch with my kids. And then the third one, back to the music. I'm a big music guy, so that's a good topic of conversation. But I don't know if I have any guilty pleasure songs, just because I'm not ashamed of my musical taste. I have an eclectic musical taste. I love music. I love all kinds of music. When I was younger, I lived in Kansas for 5 years, so I'm really big on like '90s country. I love '80s. You know, '80s post-hardcore music and synth pop, and I'm a big punk guy. I like pop punk as well. So, I mean, I really like everything, but I guess if we're going guilty pleasure, maybe Whitney Houston. I love Whitney Houston. Like I'll be singing "I Want to Dance with Somebody" at the top of my lungs whether I'm alone or not, every time that song comes on, just because it's a damn good track. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love me some Whitney Houston.
Yes, love it. That's all great answers. I do want to ask, just kind of first out here, Dolphins fan, what did you think of the season? What are some improvements? I mean, we are a football first podcast. Me and Michael,
Yeah,
we love the Bears, so we're a little bit more fortunate this year compared
yeah,
to, but
yeah.
that's not usually the case. So, what did you think of the season?
It sucked. I thought it was a terrible season. I thought the Dolphins. I thought they were going to be better. I know the national media was down on them ahead of the season. I actually do a little writing myself on the side as
Oh,
just
nice.
kind of a fun side gig. I write for a website called The Finsider, PHINSIDER. I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years at this point. And so I'm pretty plugged in when it comes to the Dolphins, and there was a lot of trepidation around this season, and I wasn't buying into it. I was like, I think we're going to be good this year. I think we have a shot to surprise some people, and I was very, very wrong. We were
Yeah.
not good. We sucked, as we often do. I'm a Dolphins fan. We haven't won a playoff game since December of the year 2000. So the Twin Towers were still standing the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game, which is a really sad thought, but it was a very disappointing season. I do think it was time for Mike McDaniel to be let go. I think he'll be a better head coach wherever he ends up the second time around, whether that's this hiring cycle or if I were him, I would go be an offensive coordinator on a good team. Maybe the Lions, who are
Yeah.
interested in him, I would go be an offensive coordinator there and kind of rehab my image a little bit instead of taking a head coaching job at one of these openings that may not prove to be fruitful for him. I know the
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns are interested. I don't think that's a good offensive personnel grouping to go coach. So if I were him, I'd probably go be an offensive coordinator somewhere. Like I mentioned, the Lions are a good spot. Maybe the Ravens would be a good spot for him as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I wish him well in the future. And then, of course, Tua flamed out this year after having some really good years in 2022 and 2023. Just wasn't the same the past couple seasons, and this year was really he was really scraping the bottom of the barrel, and eventually did get replaced by the seventh round rookie Quinn Ewers. So
Yeah.
we'll see where the Dolphins go with Tua from here on out. But I do believe he's probably played his last game in Miami
Yeah.
as a member of the Dolphins.
Ewers didn't look
Yeah,
terrible though.
I'm an Alabama fan too, so I really wanted to see him succeed, and he had some really just over the top
Yeah.
success there that at the beginning. So it is weird that they are in the position they're in now, just a couple of years removed from a 70-point game.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but but I think Ewers was a good pickup. I think he's a serviceable quarterback, so um, you might be able to build around him future wise.
We'll see. I know he was a big like Mike McDaniel was a big proponent of his, and now that McDaniel's gone, we'll see if he gets a fair shake at playing time moving forward. I guess it's all going to depend on who the head coach is, but the Dolphins don't have a lot of cap space. It's not like they can go out and and spend big bucks to fix this team next year. So I think maybe 2026 should kind of be a planned down year, reset the cap a little bit, go into 2027 with a higher draft pick when the QBs coming out are supposed to be top notch, and see where you can go from there. But
Yeah.
I've been a Dolphins fan since 1991, so I'm kind of used to this not winning football games and not doing anything important kind of deal that the Dolphins have put me through basically my entire life.
Yeah.
It's before your time, but you do have that one thing to rest on.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
I mean,
Undefeated season. And thankfully I'm old enough that I got to watch the last few years of Marino's career.
Yeah.
So that's better than some of these Dolphins fans that are 25 years old and they've seen nothing of note ever.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 45, so in my younger days, they were like one of the contenders always. So,
Mhm.
and that's the NFL. It's cyclical. I mean, it's been a while since us Bears fans have had any sort of semblance of success, let alone a playoff win at home.
Yeah, that was an amazing game. That was an amazing game with a wild comeback there in the fourth quarter. So I was rooting for you guys. I like to root for the underdogs, and I don't know if they were actually the underdogs in that game, but in my mind,
Yeah.
the Bears as a franchise are the underdog.
100%.
Yeah, I felt like we were going in just to yeah, we've been owned for a decade or more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I wanted to get into, so I always like to open it up to where I would love to hear your story of how you got to this point through your wrestling career. Always love to hear kind of the how I got here. So just give us this kind of short snippet of like your wrestling career, how you got into the wrestling world, and then to the point now where you're at Black and Brave and one of the trainers there and building up the future generation of wrestlers.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short for you. I became a fan of wrestling when I was about 5 years old, right around the same time I became a fan of the Miami Dolphins. So we're talking around 1991, 1992. And as a young child, I was just attracted to the larger than life characters. They felt like superheroes come to life, you know. So I kind of got obsessed with it from an early age, and that just never waned. You know, a lot of people go through a period of their childhood where they're wrestling fans, right? And there was never that period never ended for me. You know, I was a fan from the time I was a little kid all the way through until I got into the business, which was during my senior year, or actually the summer before my senior year in high school. I had my first match, August of 2003. Seth Rollins was on that card as well. We had been friends for a little bit prior to that, and it was fun and it was addictive immediately. So um, we got through our senior year of high school wrestling once a month, you know, kind of getting the taste of what it's like to be an independent wrestler. And then we decided to go get trained professionally in Chicago. So we would go to Chicago multiple times a week to learn from our trainer. Up there, and as soon as we graduated we started wrestling every single weekend, multiple times every single weekend, just trying to get our names out there. And thankfully that happened pretty quick for us. You know, we started wrestling for a company called IWA Mid South, and at the time a lot of big names on the independent circuit were wrestling there, and those names would go on to become household names. You know, we were on shows with CM Punk, we were on shows with AJ Styles, we were on shows with Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, who are now in WWE as well. And so we got to kind of learn from some of the best independent workers out there. So we rise the ranks pretty quickly. Fast forward a little bit to spring of 2007, we actually got a tryout for Ring of Honor long before they were affiliated with AEW. That AEW wasn't even a company then, but we got a tryout for Ring of Honor, which was, you know, the biggest independent company in the world. Maybe not even an independent, because they were signing people to contracts, and that's what we were going there for. And unfortunately, in the tag team match, which was myself and Seth, who was wrestling as Tyler Black at that time, that's how we get the name Black and Brave. We were against the Briscoe brothers, and unfortunately, there was a mishap in the match. I ended up herniating 2 discs in my neck while also breaking a vertebrae in my lower back, and that kind of derailed my aspirations of making it to the big time. So I continued to wrestle here and there, but my back and my body just couldn't really deal with it. So I ended up taking about a year and a half off to kind of rehab. During that time, Seth would get signed to WWE, and the rest is kind of history for him there. But I took a year and a half off to rehab my back. Came back to the independents with a completely different mindset. I no longer looked at it as a, s- uh, it wasn't going to be a career for me, so to speak. My in ring career. I was doing it for fun and because I loved it and because I wanted to scratch the itch. Like I said, it's an addiction, and performing's an addiction as well. So that was going really well, and during that time, I ended up running just a couple like local camps here. In the Quad Cities with some local guys that wanted to get into the professional wrestling business. And Seth was down in Florida training with WWE, and he would check in on me. Hey, how's that training going? How are these guys doing? And we'd kind of bounce ideas back and forth. And then one day he said, I'll tell you what. When I get called up to the main roster, and I move back home to Iowa, we're going to start a wrestling school. How would you feel about that? You know, I thought it was one of those things that people talk about, but it never actually comes to fruition. So, oh yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, we could totally do that. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'm watching a pay-per-view one day, and he makes his debut on the main roster with the Shield, Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, and I was like, oh, cool, my buddy's in WWE now, like he's on television, and this seems to be, you know, a pretty big deal. The Shield was a big deal. And then maybe a week or two later, I got a text from him. He said, "Okay, I'm moving back to Iowa. Let's get together and figure out how we're going to open this wrestling school." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe this wasn't just lip service." So we ended up opening Black and Brave in August of 2014, and we are still going strong today. And you know, I never envisioned this being my life, but I'm very, very thankful that it is. I get to take my passion, which is professional wrestling, and I get to pass the knowledge that I've acquired over, you know, 23 years of doing this, and I get to pass it on to the next generation. And you know, through running independent shows as well, I get to watch my students as they first embark on their professional wrestling journeys, and I get to help them and give them instant critiques and instant feedbacks as soon as their matches are done. So it's a, you know, it's a blessed life. It's a charmed life, not one I ever thought I'd be living, but very happy things worked out the way they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so question, obviously you started 2014. How did you guys what was the pivot during COVID? Did you
Yeah, that's
still
a great question.
train people during that?
Yeah, we did. So COVID first started, and we were like, okay, we had a new class that was just about to start, and we were like, well, maybe we'll delay this class by a couple weeks, let this whole COVID thing blow over, and then we'll get it started. So we delayed it by a couple weeks, and then we delayed it by a couple weeks more, and then we kind of looked around, and we were like, well, if we don't start this class now, we're going to have to delay every subsequent class. Thankfully, our school has been in high demand ever since we opened, and we're usually about a year and a half to 2 years booked in
Wow.
advance. And so it was like, well, do we keep pushing back every single class that we have filled up, or do we try and continue training while taking some precautions and doing it as safely as we can? And that's what we chose to do. You know, there was mask protocols, and we were taking temperatures when people were coming into the building. And if anybody was feeling sick, we had them take a test. And if people popped positive, and they did, we had people pop positive. They would end up quarantining, and we would take a day or two off from training, and then everybody else would get tested to see if anyone else was positive. And thankfully, you know, there weren't many difficulties beyond that, and we were able to get through it. But it was one of those things where it was like, all right, we kind of fancy ourselves problem solvers, and it
Yeah.
was like, all right, what's the best way to get through this situation? And I feel like we were able to do that to the best of our ability, and you know, there weren't too many issues with the whole COVID situation while we were dealing with it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Because I know that COVID did shut down a lot of good businesses like that,
Sure
that
did.
operate, out of the mainstream view of people and just kind of get forgotten about as far as, it being a small business, local business that he needs to still operate.
Yeah.
I want to go back to for a second. Uh, I, just for athletes that kind of struggle with this, how what were the emotions of going through? So you're really good buddies with Seth Rollins, going up with him, and then you kind of have that injury happen, and you kind of see him continue his career, and obviously be just a huge part of wrestling, and you were kind of following the same path with him along the way. How does how as an athlete do you balance that emotion and like still be happy for your friend, but also like you have to have some like dark feelings in there at some point of like, geez, like that could have been me a little bit, like so, and then also to come back and be a business partner with him, still really good buddies with him, like things like that. How did you fight all of through that?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I was always really happy for his success. You know, from the moment I met him, I swear to God, this is true. I was 15. Uh, he was 16. I literally turned 16 the next day after meeting him. That's how I remember it. It was the day before my 16th birthday, and his birthday's like a month prior to mine. But from the day I met him, he said, "One day I'm going to be in WWE. I'm going to main event WrestleMania, and I'm going to be considered one of the best wrestlers in the world." From the time he was a 16-year-old kid, and I laughed at that time, and I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, buddy. Like, we'll see if that happens." Spoiler alert, it did happen. Crazy. He's the hardest person or hardest working person I've ever met in my life. But yeah, there was I was never upset or jealous of his success because he earned it every step of the way. But for me myself, there was a lot of bitterness towards the professional wrestling business. There was a lot of negative feelings and emotions that I had to work through to kind of not just rehab myself physically, but rehab myself mentally. I was like you mentioned, I was rising the ranks. Him and I were neck and neck, side by side the entire time. And there's if you ask our trainer, who he thought was going to be the one who made it, he tells everyone, I thought it was going to be Merek. Merek was the better wrestler when they first started out. So I do feel that if I were given the same opportunities that Seth had, he got to train under Dusty Rhodes before Dusty Rhodes passed away. I do think I would have been able to get to the level that he got to. And who knows what would have happened after that. And so there were a lot of emotions. That injury happened when I was 20 years old. So I wasn't mature mentally and emotionally at that point to really handle it in the best way possible. So there was a good 2, 3, 4 years where I was just kind of a jerk to a lot of people because I was really angry and really bitter with what happened. And, when I came back to professional wrestling and I had finally worked through those tough emotions, I kind of went on a long apology tour, saying sorry to the people that I had offended along the way,
Right.
and I admit it readily. I was a jerk. I was not a fun person to be around. I still wrestled occasionally, not as much as I had been wrestling, but it was kind of one of the only ways I knew how to make money at the time. So I still did it to the best of my ability, even though my health wasn't great. But in the meantime, it wasn't fun to be around me in the locker room,
Yeah.
and so I had to apologize to a lot of people, and thankfully, a lot of people were very gracious and patient with me, and a lot of those people that I was bitter towards and a jerk towards, they forgave me and we moved on and became really close friends. So yeah, you're right. There was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with personally before I was able to come back and just completely change my mindset. There's a lot of pressure that's taken off of your shoulders when your ultimate goal isn't to be a world famous millionaire celebrity. When you're just doing it to have fun, to get out of the house, to hang out with the boys, and entertain people along the way, it can be a much more fun and satisfying experience. And so it kind of reignited my passion for professional wrestling when I was able to come back from that injury. Um, and thankfully I stuck with it
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if I hadn't put in the work to work through those feelings and emotions.
Right. Right.
So yeah, question about like as far as being a trainer now, then you're kind of on the other side and a mentor now. Obviously that injury affects how you do that, right? As far
Yep.
as teaching people the right way to do things and probably give you a different perspective of the injury and how it happened, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just joking with one of my buddies earlier today, actually. When you're a young wrestler, you feel invincible. You feel like I'll never get hurt, I'll never get injured. I'm going to be young with supple tendons and ligaments for the rest of my life. And then you get older and you start accumulating injuries and you realize that's not the case. And it happens to every generation. Every young kid gets told by a veteran somewhere, hey, you don't need to do all that crazy stuff. Learn to tell a story, learn to work, kid.
Yeah.
And the young kid doesn't listen, and they go out there and they try dangerous things. They take risks and chances, and they end up getting injured, and they end up paying for it later on. So it's just one of those things where I try to use my life and my injuries as an example to teach my students, and to the degree in which they listen, sometimes they take it to heart. Rarely. Most times they go and make the same mistakes that Seth and I did. Seth's had a number of injuries himself, so it's just one of those things where you try your best, but you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So these guys find out the hard way, and it's kind of a rite of passage in our business.
Yeah. I wa- what is what is it like to be a part of? So I'm not originally from the area. I'm from Cedar Rapids, so it's not like super far. But uh, what is it like being part of such a hot spot too of like the kind of independent wrestling community here? I've noticed is ginormous. Like there, we've spoken to Danny Maldo of HAW and kind of learned from him as well. Like it just seems like it's a growing thing here, and there's like Lopez like advertises that they are a wrestling like they love the wrestling community and have had multiple wrestlers in there. So what is it like being a part of that, and what do you see in the growing community of the wrestling industry here?
Well, it's funny. The guys from Lopez are actually cousins of Seth Rollins,
Oh,
so
I didn't even
that's a
know
big
that.
reason why they are big wrestling fans. They grew up with him watching wrestling, and now obviously they're related to one of the biggest superstars in the history of the business. But myself, I've been around. I've been in the Quad Cities. I moved here in '97, and I started participating in independent wrestling in this area in 2003. So not to toot my own horn, but I'm one of the OGs.
Yeah,
I'm one of the old guys. I'm one of the people who has helped make independent wrestling such a big deal here in the Quad Cities. And
yeah,
SCW Pro has been around, since August 2003 as well. 20 coming up on 23 years of being a promotion in one area in independent wrestling is virtually unheard of.
yeah,
A lot of independent promotions start, they have a handful of shows and they flame out, or they last for a couple of years and then they flame out. But that's not something that has happened to us. We've been able to work through a whole bunch of stuff over the past 2 decades plus to remain active. And not just active, but we are thriving right now. We just had an event on Saturday in Bluegrass. It was our version of the Royal Rumble called the Prestige Rumble, and the place was packed, wall to wall people for that event. Um, I think SCW has garnered a good following, a loyal following in the area. I think people look forward to our events, and I think they know through consistency over 23 years that if you come to our events, you are going to get what you paid for. You are
yeah,
going to get a quality night out of really affordable entertainment. We charge $10 for tickets. That's front row, second row, third row, and on. Doesn't matter where you sit. $10 for your ticket, because we want you to be able to bring the whole family.
yeah,
So to me, basically being kind of the godfather of independent wrestling here in the Quad Cities, it's not a job or a title that I take lightly. I take a lot of pride in that fact, that we've been able to lead the way for as long as we have, and hope to continue to do that for many, many years into the future.
yeah,
Yeah, I would say you've grown a great community here. There it is
Thank you.
definitely thriving, um and I lived in San Diego, and there's obviously in those bigger cities there's kind of always some sort of wrestling going on, but to have it as strong as we have it here is definitely a benefit. And well, it's similar to our music scene. I feel like we have a good music scene that kind of goes overlooked too, just
Agreed.
as a location.
Yeah.
yeah. You look like you're gearing up for one, Michael.
No, no, no. I
Okay.
was waiting for you. I'm sorry. I know we're coming up against
Yeah,
our time
I
here.
do have one, we always play Mount Rushmore with every guest. Um, and just being a wrestling fan and being, as you kind of said, at 5 years old, you just grew into being a wrestling fan. I would love to hear um, your top four uh, wrestlers of when you were a kid. And then also, I just have to throw in a little like, so how do you get on Night Fight? Because that is just that's a crazy part of the story too that I want to go to. So those are my kind of closing questions of, well, you can answer one while you think about your four wrestlers, or if you have that ready to go, I ready for that one too.
I'll start with the night fight. That was an interesting deal. I was actually reached out to via Instagram DM. If you'd like to DM me on Instagram at mbrave13, by some Hollywood producers asking if I would be interested in being on an armored combat fighting show, and I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know if this was a scripted show or what it eventually ended up being, which was a legitimate competition, which ended up being terrifying for me because I, much like most people in this world, have zero experience with armored combat fighting. Unfortunately for me, the every other person on my episode of the show was a professional armored combat fighter. Some had been doing it for upwards of 20 years. So you can imagine how things went for me. I did get my butt kicked, but I tried my best and didn't back down from anybody. And it was a blast. It was a super fun time. Something that if I was offered the opportunity to do again, I absolutely would. Unfortunately, that show was a one and done. That was one season on the History Channel, and then it did not come back. But if it ever did, I would 100% volunteer to be on the show. But yeah, they hit me up on Instagram DM, asked if I wanted to be a part of it, sent me some YouTube links so I could study, I guess, scout. I watched it and said, A, this looks terrifying, and B, this looks incredibly exciting, and I have to do it. So I ended up going through a couple rounds of interviews with some producers. They liked my background, they liked my personality, and I got cast for the show. And eventually I got flown out to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to some big warehouse where I got roughly 2 hours of training on how to put on a suit of armor, which weighed about 80 pounds. So that was no joke. And then some sword training with a couple guys, a father-son duo from New Hampshire. They showed me how to use a sword and use an axe, and they were like, "All right, tomorrow you're going to be a part of Night Fight." So it was wild, it was crazy, but it was an absolute blast. I ended up getting busted open. Somebody punched me, of all things, punched me with a steel gauntlet on their hand, and it dented my helmet and cut me over the eyebrow. So you get this really cool moment on my episode. And I'm a worker. I'm an entertainer. I know what I'm doing here. And so I pull my helmet off and I look directly in the camera. And I mean, I can see the blood pouring down. And I look directly in the camera and I go, "Am I bleeding? Am I bleeding?" And they bring this camera and they zoom in on my face. And I go, "Yeah, yeah, that's good. I love this shit." Sorry if we can't cuss on this
No, you're good.
podcast. You beep it out.
That's awesome.
But they bleeped it out on the show. But it was a good time. Got to hang with Christian from the famous Edge and Christian duo, and become friends with him. So I would 100% do it again if I was ever given the opportunity. It was amazing. It was amazing. One of those once in a lifetime opportunities. So it was a good time.
Yeah.
And then Mount Rushmore. Okay, so you're asking me my favorite wrestlers when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, well, number one, Shawn Michaels. He's always been my favorite wrestler. The gear's cool with the hearts and all that, and the different colors. So I was always a fan of Shawn Michaels. Um, Love Diesel. A lot of these guys were Click members, and I didn't even know it as a kid because we didn't have internet dirt sheets ruining things for everyone. So I didn't know it. I just gravitated towards who I thought was cool. And one of those guys was Diesel, Big Daddy Cool. He was the man. This was pre NWO days. So, this was trucker Kevin Nash as Diesel with the fist going up and the leather glove in the hand. So Shawn Michaels, Diesel, Razor Ramon, also a member of the Clique. Didn't know it, but I thought he was cool. He had that swagger. He had the curl coming down and the toothpick and the accent and I loved the Razor's Edge finishing maneuver. I always thought that was really cool. And then if I had to pick a fourth favorite as a child, it was probably Bret Hart, the antithesis of the Clique and Shawn Michaels. But I thought he was a fantastic wrestler, and I liked his style, and the pink and black tights were pretty cool as well. So Shawn Michaels, Big Daddy Cool, Diesel, Razor Ramon, and Bret Hart would be on my childhood Mount Rushmore of favorite professional wrestlers.
Awesome. Well, Merek, I appreciate you being on. Me and Michael, obviously, we're big fans of like the wrestling community here. We've loved kind of getting to know a lot of the people around here. So we appreciate you being on and just giving us kind of the story and rundown of all this stuff going on and kind of how you got here. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. Thank you, Michael. And maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to get, if any listeners want to get in there to Black and Brave, they better sign up now because it's
Yeah.
27 before you can get in there.
Yep.
All right.
Good talking to you.
Thank you.